Women in World War II is such a broad subject that I couldn't possibly fit everything or everyone into one short video, and I'm not gonna try. With the reveal of Battlefield 5 being set in World War II this year, many fans in the community have expressed concern and outrage over the fact that women were predominantly featured within the reveal trailer, and that women fighting on the front lines is not only historically inaccurate and not realistic, but also immersion breaking. The same arguments were basically made by the Call of Duty community nearly a year ago with World War II, as they included the option of choosing a race and gender for the multiplayer aspect. Now, I won't go into the arguments and will try and stay as neutral as possible for this video as I detail the facts of women on the battlefield. Now, without further ado, I'm Christopher, the video game historian here with the BFNations, and this episode of Battlefield History is going to detail some of the accomplishments of women who fought, served, and died while doing their duty for their country in World War II. Now, this video is not going to detail the entire history of women in the armed forces, but will provide details on the roles women played and some notable badass women of the war. Now, to qualify, I am only going to be talking about the women in the Allied forces, such as Great Britain, the United States, and Soviet Russia. In Great Britain, women were essential to the war effort, both as civilians and military personnel. In 1941 alone, over 600,000 women were conscripted for military service, both at home and abroad. Since the British didn't allow women to be in combat, they were drafted into women-only services, such as the Women's Royal Naval Service, Women's Auxiliary Air Force, or the Auxiliary Territorial Service, and assigned non-combat duties, such as working as nurses, cooks, telephonists, mechanics, armorers, and searchlight operators. Although women could volunteer for combat duty on anti-air guns shooting down German planes and missiles. Searchlight operators, however, were the most common job for women, and even an entire regiment was dedicated to them called the 93rd Searchlight Regiment. Civilian women could also volunteer their services for the SOE, which assigned them to be secret agents who were trained in firearms and explosives and were to be dropped into occupied Europe to perform sabotage and assassinations. On the home front, however, women could lend their services and volunteer to join the Auxiliary Fire Corps, the Civil Defense, or even the Salvation Army to do what they could for the war effort. For Great Britain, nearly 75% of all the women serving in military roles were volunteers. In the United States, women played equally important roles for the U.S. Army, with over 60,000 working as nurses stationed overseas or stateside caring for the wounded. In 1942, Congress authorized the creation of the Women's Auxiliary Army Corps that saw nearly 150,000 women serve along the U.S. Army on active duty as switchboard operators, mechanics, and bakers, among other duties. Aside from the nurses, the WAAC were the first women to serve alongside the men within the Army itself. A year later, the Public Health Services established the Cadet Nurse Corps, which trained 125,000 women for military service, 80% of whom provided nursing care in U.S. hospitals. They were also a big help for the Army Air Force, as women acted as ferry pilots, bringing the newly constructed planes from the factories and flying them to the airfields. Throughout the war, nearly 400,000 women would serve, with 460 dying, 16 of which were killed in action. The USSR would be the only major power in the war that allowed women to fight alongside their main military forces. Women serving in the Russian army could be assigned to be infantry, pilots, or tankers. Roughly 800,000 women would serve, totaling just 3% of the total Russian military population of the war. Of that number, 300,000 served in anti-air units, with another good chunk of women being pilots for the Russian Air Force. And being that there were so many of them, they actually created 3 whole wings made up of women. For the rest, they were assigned to infantry combat, tanker duty, or sniper detail. In fact, the deadliest female sniper Russia had to offer was a woman by the name of Lyudmila Pavlyuchenko, who racked up 309 confirmed kills. Other notable women of the war include an Allied spy by the name of Violet Szabo, who worked for the SOE during the war, who during her second mission was forced to provide covering fire for her comrades to get away safely before she herself was captured by the Germans and sent to Ravensbrück, where she was executed. The White Lily of Stalingrad, Lydia Litviak, would become the first female ace pilot, shooting down a dozen German aircrafts before being killed herself in 1943. The fighting girlfriend Maria Oktyabrskaya was a Russian tanker who, after finding out her husband was killed in action, petitioned Joseph Stalin asking him for a tank so that she could get her revenge on the fascist pigs, as she called them, who killed her husband. With very little resistance, she was given a T-34 tank and assigned to the 26th Guard Tank Brigade. In 1943, she showed that she had bigger balls than any of her male soldiers at Smolensk, for after taking out several anti-tank and machine gun nests, her tank was hit and she was forced to jump out, repair the tank under heavy fire, before jumping back in to kill more Nazis. The Dutch resistance fighter Hani Schaft, who helped distribute illegal newspapers, transported weapons, stole or falsified identity cards that extracted information, helped hide Jewish children, and even performed sabotages. She was also involved in bigger actions such as destroying a power plant in Haarlem and taking out several members of the German secret police and Dutch collaborators. Eventually, she was captured in 1945 and executed and buried with 421 male resistance fighters in the sand at Overveen Beach. U.S. naval officers Frances Eliza Wells and Harriet Ida Pickens not only broke the glass ceiling, but shattered it as well, as they became the first black female commissioned officers of the U.S. Navy. Even the current Queen Elizabeth II, then princess, helped out the cause as a mechanic for the British military. These are just some of the women and some of the roles that they played during the Second World War. I could go on and on, but unfortunately, this is all I have time for on this episode of Battlefield History. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like, subscribe to the Battlefield Nations YouTube channel, and leave your thoughts down below. Let us know if you would like to know more about some of these women or others I did not mention once Battlefield 5 releases, and I'll happily go into more detail in another video. For now though, I'm the video game historian, and until next time I will see you on the battlefield.